here's what's new in your lives. I know I made a video like a week ago, but I haven't really sat down and made a video in like a while, so if this comes out really horribly, I'm sorry. For those of you who are new here, hi there, my name is Sydney Zarlingo. I use she, her pronouns. I am autistic, disabled, and gay. My favorite color is buttercup yellow, and I make educational videos as well as vlogs because I'm currently in conservatory in Italy, and also music things, because I do music things. And speaking of music things, in case you aren't subscribed or just didn't notice, I released a new music video like Wednesday. And I spent 6 hours laying on a stone floor for that music video. So for my sake, please go watch it. Also, it's just a really great song. And there's also some other things that you're gonna know about shortly. So stay tuned for that. But anyway, today's video is about inspiration porn. So, step 1. What is inspiration porn? Inspiration porn, coined by the Australian disability advocate Stella Young, is defined as the portrayal of people with disabilities as inspirational solely or in part on the basis of their disability. Typically, inspiration porn stories have a one-dimensional disabled character or person in real life, and they simply exist as a catalyst for a non-disabled person's success or inspiration, heroism, what have you. Examples being those stories in the local news praising a non-disabled student just for asking an autistic kid to prom, a disabled person being excessively praised for simply existing, and or the character in the wheelchair who inspires the main character to go run a marathon and win it because the disabled person made them realize how lucky they are. Whatever. And before we go into the reasons why that is harmful, I want to be fully transparent and say that I used to like these kinds of stories. And we'll talk in a bit about how easy it is to just say, all of this is bad, and not realize the nuance and the important pieces of it. But I just want to say that it is a normal human emotion to find joy in these things and to like fluffy, feel-good content. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. You are not a bad person for consuming this kind of media. It's just important to be mindful of the effects said media has on our outlook of the world and how we perceive others. You feel me? Now, the inherent issue with inspiration porn is the overall dehumanization of disabled people, which it does in several different ways. So we're going to look at some specific examples and break it down. So first is the thing where the non-disabled person asks the disabled person to prom, or is just generally a decent human being to the disabled person. And that kind of story teaches people that they should be nice to us out of a desire to be praised for that, rather than as a desire to see us as equal humans. So all of the support that they give us is just hollow and insincere because people don't want to actually be an ally, they want to seem like a good person for being an ally. And on top of that, if you constantly see stories on the news praising somebody for basic human decency to a disabled person, you would assume that that is the exception rather than the rule, and that you're therefore allowed to be horrible to us, which is like simply not the move. There is a mosquito, hello. Now, if you're thinking, okay, but nobody was gonna actually take them to prom, so shouldn't they just be happy that they were asked and, you know, it's a cute story, so can't we just enjoy it? And so we're gonna do a little thought exercise here. Now, imagine that you were born with, say, 3 arms and blue skin. Got it? Cool. Okay, so you're used to being left out of things and ridiculed and therefore you don't have many friends and you're pretty wary of people. You hear that prom is coming up, but you don't expect anybody to ask you because, well, you got 3 arms and blue skin. But then a random person that you have literally never spoken to in your life comes up to your lunch table with all of their friends and asks you to prom. And everyone else claps and somebody's live streaming it for some reason. How would that make you feel? Precisely. Another inspiration porn thing that you see in the news a lot is the whole, this middle school robotics team made a wheelchair for a disabled teacher, which should strike you as icky from the beginning because, I mean, what does that say about our healthcare system that somebody relies on a middle school robotics team for, you know, a mobility aid that they need to function? But cool. But also because, again, the disabled person is completely decentered in this narrative. And the story is about the middle school robotics team. The disabled person is just a byproduct, a catalyst for the sake of a feel-good story. And again, not the move. And then we have the, you're an inspiration, here's an award for just existing. And you may be thinking to yourself, okay, but that doesn't exist. In which case I suggest you go watch Wonder and then come back to me. But like, imagine if every time you opened a door, everybody applauded and cheered you on. Or every time you tied your shoes or went up a flight of stairs. I cannot express how incredibly annoying and belittling that is. And on one level, I'm not gonna lie, it's nice as a disabled person to have people acknowledge that something can be hard. For example, as I mentioned earlier, I'm at a physical theater conservatory right now, and a whole lot of the work that we're doing in class is essentially a sensory nightmare. And it genuinely does mean a lot when one of my friends sees how hard that I've been struggling with something and how hard that I'm working on something, and they tell me that they're really proud of me. I mean, yes, I'm doing the same thing everybody else is, and I'm probably doing a significantly less good job of said thing because of the barriers that are just getting me to even be able to be in the classroom. But in all honesty, it does feel kind of nice to be acknowledged. But it's also important to recognize how much better it would be if, I don't know, the space were actually accessible and inclusive. Like, sure, I'm proud of myself for doing a neutral mask exercise without having a panic attack, but it would have been a whole million times better if there was instead an option for a sensory-friendly mask for the thing, so I wouldn't have had to have the first 2 panic attacks in front of my entire class in the first place. I am resilient because I have no choice. I either do the sensory horror or I fail the class. Like, yes, I'm really brave for what I'm doing and for being here and for doing this, but I shouldn't have to be brave all the time. I should be able to get through a school day without having to use so much courage that I get the shakes. There's obviously some serious systemic issues with that type of education system. Now, I understand the desire to see resilience. I mean, there's something innately beautiful about seeing somebody against all odds succeed. Because, well, we see that and we think, well, if they can get through something that difficult, then so can I. And again, in all honesty, I see pictures of other disabled people getting married and having kids and thinking, wow, despite all odds, they made it, so I can too. And this includes stories of people who are told they're never gonna walk again and then running a marathon, or somebody coming back from addiction even stronger. I mean, there's just something so hopeful and pure and good about that, in knowing that humans are capable of that kind of resilience and can still succeed. But the issue here is twofold. One, these stories typically decenter the disabled person that they're talking about, and 2, we're being called inspiring for being resilient in navigating a system that is designed for our exclusion instead of, you know, holding the system accountable for making it exclusive and then making said system more inclusive. It also creates a dichotomy of, well, the poor disabled person can do it, so why can't you? Or, well, I saw a Paralympian with cerebral palsy get gold for track and field, so why are you still in a wheelchair? It continues the idea that a person's disability is their own fault, and that if they tried hard enough, they could just miraculously fix it, or that all disabilities are one monolith. It also completely invalidates our own struggles. For example, I know several autistic people who love doing neutral mask work, which means that a teacher might look at me having a panic attack on the floor and say, you know, I get that you're having a panic attack, but these other people with the exact same disability as you are having a great time, so I need you to pull yourself together. Rather than, okay, how can we make this easier and more sensory friendly for you so that you can actually learn and thrive in this learning environment rather than just suffer? But again, let's be honest about it. A lot of what I'm saying is very theoretical and impractical. I mean, if you were to cut out every inspiration porny story from your media consumption, you would likely not see any disabled representation. Non-inspiration porn representation is very few and far between, and you would probably miss having all these stories about resilience, and you, as a single human, aren't going to miraculously change the entire systemic issue by no longer consuming inspiration porn. So all I ask is that you're critical with your media consumption and that, well, you take a moment to think, is anybody, being completely dehumanized by this story before you share it? And maybe don't tell a random stranger on the street in a wheelchair that they're inspiring for getting out of the house. A general rule that's really great is disabled person doing something cool, inspirational. Disabled person doing something regular and boring, not inspirational. But also, if you know somebody well and you know that it's hard for them to do a specific, regular, boring seeming thing and that they've worked really hard at it, you are so welcome to tell them that you're proud of them and that you see how hard they've worked. Just make sure you're being a good ally and trying your hardest to make said thing more accessible for them if you can. I feel like I've talked in circles for this entire video because all of this can seem very logical and black and white on paper, but then you bring it into the real world and examples and feelings and then it gets all mushy and confusing again. So in an attempt to summarize, Please treat disabled people like regular normal people, be wary of media that doesn't do that, and do what you can to make the world more accessible for other people. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for learning. Remember, your story isn't over, it has only just begun, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.